Welcome to the Music Business Conversations podcast, where I share the conversations I've had many times with artists, songwriters, musicians, and others here in this podcast for you. My name is John Mathis Jr. Many years ago, I acquired boxes of master recordings from the 50s, 60s, and 70s of my father, as well as the copyrights to all those songs. Sounds kind of good, right? My dad was a successful country music singer and songwriter in the 50s and 60s, and I was interested in preserving his music history, but I hadn't really began building his legacy brand at this time. There was some research done about his career, and I had a website to display that information, but there were no digital releases of his music on streaming platforms, and what I had received were quarter-inch reel-to-reel tapes. So with no real clear direction on what the ultimate value of receiving all this was, whether it would even lead to some monetary value, I only knew I wanted to preserve his music. So I simply started doing the things I knew to do with the master recordings and the copyrights. I had been working in the music business for over a decade by this time, so I had the knowledge and experience of what to do with recordings. Even though I didn't see a long-term goal, I knew all the little things to do in that moment. And that is what I started doing, all the little things that were habits of my professional life. It was from doing all those little things that I stumbled onto bigger things with my dad's recordings later on. After a few years of releasing his music in the digital world and doing all the little things that came with it, I found sync license representation, and through that discovered there was a niche for vintage recordings in film, TV, and commercials, and started having some of those recordings placed in indie films and documentaries and even TV shows like Young Sheldon and Resident Alien. One of those old recordings, which had never been released ever, a 1968 recording that was on a reel-to-reel tape for 50 years, was part of the songs that were initially transferred to digital format and released. I thought it was cool because I had never heard the recording before, but didn't think it would be anything that would work for classic country radio or even sync placement. But I did all the same little things I did with all the other songs. That turned out to be the best sync placement to date, as it landed in a national TV commercial, not only paying sync license fee for its use, but providing performance royalties every time it aired. That ran for 2 or 3 years. But none of those sync license placements would not have happened if I had not done the little things in the beginning that I knew to do. I did them month after month, year after year. And believe me, sync license placements were not even on my radar or a goal. That just happened because, yes, the little things I knew to do with the music. That is just one example in my professional life of doing the little things. Little things. This has kind of been one of my mantras to artists, songwriters, and musicians for over a decade now. I've had the personal experience of watching artists, songwriters, and musician friends for several decades, and one common theme among those who have succeeded has been doing the little things. I remember one friend in the late 90s and early 2000s who was a singer. He wasn't enjoying the best of success, but he was diligent with doing the little things in regard to singing. I think at the time I might even had the thought I would just do something else. Just seeing some of his struggles with small venues, low pay, and all of the things that went with that. But years later, I saw him land with a new group, and they began to have bigger stages and bigger successes. Is he world famous? No. You probably wouldn't even know his name. But he makes a good living doing what he started out doing decades ago, and he's done so for years now. And a big part of that success is he got up every day, day by day, and did the little things he knew he was supposed to do as a singer. I've heard the perspective many times from artists, songwriters, and musicians that landing that one big stage or getting that one big break would launch their career. But 99% of those people, the people you see on those platforms, those big stages, got there from doing the little things. Let me give you another example of something I've noticed in the last few years with singers in particular. I've worked with several Latin American singers from Latin American countries, and I've been surprised each time working with these artists in the studio or seeing them on stage at how well they sing and perform. Some of these artists came from poor countries and had poor beginnings, so when they started, they sang a lot. Some were singing in the streets, So that added the ability to learn to perform in a way that would garner people's attention. And they didn't know much about websites and social media and nothing about the music business. But without realizing it, they were doing the little things for years, learning to be a singer and a performer, and knowing the songs that worked for them and how to sing them and how to perform them. On the other hand, I've worked with a lot of artists who have had great websites, social media, PA systems, transportation, and even dates on the books. And they struggled with singing and struggled with their performance, especially in the studio, simply because there were so many other things to focus on before making sure and making certain they were doing the little things in regard to what they wanted to do, which is become the best singer and performer you can be if you're an artist. So if you're a singer, what are the little things? Exercising your voice, training your voice, take vocal lessons or vocal instructions, or scour YouTube for all the vocal tips you can find. Rehearsing, and rehearsing some more. Record yourself and listen back to the recording dozens of times. You'll start to hear little things that may have slipped by you in the past. Audio hits our brain 10 times faster than reading something. So it takes dozens of times listening to something before you can start catching those small things you might want to change or adapt. Learning what songs you lend the best voicing to. Learning how to deliver each word and line and not throw any words away. Learning how to perform those songs and connect with people while you do it. Performance can be or may be more important than knowing vocal acrobatics. Those are just a few of the little things for a singer. When I've been hanging out with some of my studio musician friends, it always reminds me I made the right choice in my late teens. I kind of dreamed of being a session player on keys or piano, but watching my musician friends over the years set a metronome to 90 beats per minute and run scales in all the major keys, then go to 100 beats per minute, do it all over again, then do it at 110 beats, then 120 beats, that's pretty boring to me. Watching them learn to play all styles and genres, all the little things to being a great studio musician. I only liked playing keyboard for songs I liked and to use playing keys to write songs. And there are different types of musicians: studio musicians, band musicians, and musicians who perform solo instrumentals. And the little things you do, the little things you have to do every day to succeed vary depending on what your goal is as a musician. The bottom line is learn what the little things that you need to do every day. Have the discipline to do those every day. String together days and months of doing those things and years of doing those things. And I promise you, anyone you see on a big stage somewhere or making a living at music spent a lot of time doing that. Years of doing little things each day to get there. It was the little things that got them to the big stage. There's a quote: start by doing what's necessary, then do what's possible, and suddenly you're doing the impossible. St. Francis of Assisi. Thanks for joining me on the Music Business Conversations podcast. Be sure and like, subscribe, or follow, whichever option you have on your platform of choice. And if you want to support this podcast, there are links for that as well.